When it comes to ICP, would I still hypothetically consider it to be a sleeping giant? Well, in my perspective, I don't see why not. Now, even though nothing I say is financial advice, what do I even mean by that, right? For me to kind of consider something to be a sleeping giant in this case, I think the market cap has to be pretty giant to begin with, which I think ICP is, arguably. I mean, if I take a look at the market cap of ICP right now, for instance, it is nearly 2.5 billion, right? It's pushing nearly that. So it's pretty massive in that sense. I think it's pretty giant. But then if I take a look at the price chart, ICP has had a pretty big pullback, and it's kind of sleeping in a sense where it hasn't really had that next leg up. Now, it could be said as well with a bunch of other altcoins too. I'm totally aware of that. But for what ICP is, again, a project with a pretty giant market cap that is over 2 billion, but then hasn't had that next leg up, I wouldn't consider it that, for it to be a sleeping giant, especially again when I take a look at the price chart, where ever since that pullback, it's not really doing much. But again, even besides that point, the idea of $100 when it comes to ICP, it hasn't left my mind. Now, why hasn't it left my mind, right? Because some people may be thinking, take a look at the price of ICP, it's doing not good and all this type of stuff. But then even besides that, $100 is around a 21x from here. So for simplicity's sake, let's say it's around 20x, right? It's necessarily not going to become the best thing of all time. There's projects out there with a way lower market cap than ICP. There's many of them, in fact, right? And ICP is not going to become the best thing of all time in the next 5 months. But then, even still, despite that, some people may be thinking, okay, why would you even care about that? Well, it's because I feel like I'm not looking for a 100x or a 1000x. That's not what I'm looking for. For one microcap that does well, there's a bunch that don't, because just the chances of that is so slim for a lot of these, microcaps to really make it big, right? So to me, instead, what I would rather do is just believe in projects that are pretty decently sized, but then not too massive, but not too small either. I'm not telling anyone to do anything, by the way. This is just personally what I'm doing, right? But then this is just my outlook. And, $100 market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around 54 billion. That's still around $50 billion less than what even BNB reached back in 2021 in terms of market cap. Keep in mind, BNB has done very well. It reached a new all-time high during this cycle. But if I just ignore what it's achieved during this cycle and I just take a look at what it achieved years ago, back in 2021, even back then, at one point, the market cap was over 100 billion. So this is just the way to take a look at it. And I personally do believe that the internet computer, to me, it seems a little bit more dynamic than, let's say, the BNB chain, even though, it's done very well, right? If I just take a look at BNB overall, I just kind of feel like the internet computer seems a little bit dynamic to me because, supposedly, the internet computer can connect Web 2 and Web 3 without oracles, which I think is a pretty massive deal, supposedly, because if I take a look at an oracle, right? We take a look at some other projects out there that are heavily focused on that. Let's say like Chainlink, for instance, which I think is the most popular example. But besides that, it's known for its decentralized Oracle network. Now, an Oracle in that case, it's basically a data feed that brings data from off the chain. So it's off-chain data, brings it over into the blockchain. And the reason for that is that this basically helps decentralized applications function properly, because without this off-chain data, a lot of decentralized applications out there, again, they can't really function properly. But then, again, the internet computer can supposedly connect Web 2 and Web 3 without oracles. So it's kind of like bypassing that step, right? Now, is that going to make Chainlink obsolete? I think absolutely not. Chainlink is just too popular, it's too famous, the adoption is too good. But then still, the internet computer just being able to supposedly connect Web 2 and Web 3 without oracles, kind of bypassing that is, I think, so impressive actually in the grand scheme of things. But, this is just my thought process. Now, not to mention, the internet computer, we take a look at aspects of, Caffeine AI, right? Allegedly the world's first ever self-writing apps platform. I think Dfinity overall has, done a pretty awesome job when it comes to just things surrounding the internet computer. Because, again, Caffeine AI is supposedly the world's first ever self-writing apps platform. Of course we know AI to kind of ask it questions and then it gives us a response or whatever like that. There's a lot of stuff like that. But then when it comes to helping build applications, that's pretty interesting, right? I mean, if let's say I'm a developer moving forward, maybe I might want to use AI to make an application. Who knows? So then Caffeine AI, again, it just kind of basically is not really that established yet because it was just announced not too long ago. But I like kind of the direction it has moving forward, but only time will tell. Now, not to mention, I also like, aspects of Bitcoin DeFi, which is supposedly, powered by the internet computer. So the internet computer is doing some pretty massive things. It's actually pretty dynamic in my opinion. And I just like the whole overall vibe when it comes to it. Now, personally as well, the way to take a look at it is yes, the internet computer is under some stiff competition. Like, there's a lot of competitors out there, right? Like some people out there would consider Solana to be one, even, something like BNB, or even like, Avalanche, which is a pretty popular layer one blockchain, or Algorand, right? Totally aware of that, but, it's not just one thing that people, kind of sometimes know and then they don't really care about the rest. It doesn't feel like that to me, because even if we take a look at Ethereum, is that the only layer one blockchain out there in existence? No. Solana still has a massive market cap. BNB, right? Algorand, or should I say Algorand's native token called Algo. We take a look at even Avalanche's native token called AVAX. Even ICP has a market cap that is over 2 billion. It's not, 50 billion or something like that. It's not 100 billion, but still, it's pretty massive in and of itself. So yeah, overall, I think the internet computer, despite, kind of being under some competition, or should I say even stiff competition, I don't mind it nonetheless, because it is pretty established, it is pretty famous, right? Despite the pullback, I just still like it overall. And also, the way to take a look at it is this. If I'm actually excited about a project and I'm looking to dollar cost average, I do not know why I would complain if, let's say, the price was lower. Like, again, I'm not saying I want it to be low forever, by the way. I'm not telling them to do anything. But if my intention is to dollar cost average and the price was low, I don't know why I'd complain about that, but this is just my perspective. Now, again, it's just not complaining for the short to medium term, but for the long term, of course, seeing it do good would be hypothetically a good thing. But overall, there's one thing I can do in this situation, right? And that is just a patient hold. And literally that's about it. We've seen Ethereum do well. We've seen BNB. We've seen some of these, bigger caps do pretty good. We've seen, something like, Bitcoin, of course, do hypothetically really amazing. But then at the same time, we haven't seen kind of this, like, sort of lower market cap projects have really done their thing, generally speaking. Like, sure, ICP is pretty giant, but so far we've only seen kind of like really, generally speaking, the bigger caps one, right? Like the ones that have a pretty big market cap do pretty good. But you know what? Eventually, if that volume kind of flows, more so into these lower market cap projects and maybe even lower and stuff like that, I'm still very excited if that maybe were to be the case. And I don't think I've seen an altcoin season during the cycle, if it ever even does happen. But then whether or not it starts, who knows? This month, or maybe even if it waits until March of even next year, right? Anywhere between that time, or even again, March of 2026, it is literally beyond my control. There's only one thing I can control, and again, that's myself. Just dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting, and just preparing for a moment in time in which it does something, and that's literally about it. But then overall, I am still a fan when it comes to, the internet computer, but only time will tell. Me being a fan of a project does not mean it's going to do good, right? Me being a fan of a project literally is just me liking its fundamentals, and that's about it. But, only time will tell what it's going to do, and I'm just staying patient again and just waiting, and literally that's about it. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it, and also want to say thank you for watching this video, and also, want to say that as well, because I greatly appreciate that. And it's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.